The lecture hall of the Galactic Xenobiology Institute buzzed with nervous energy as students from 17 different species filled the amphitheater-style seating. Professor Vexthal, a towering Zephyrian with crystalline skin that shifted colors with his emotions, stood before the massive holographic display that dominated the front wall. His four arms moved gracefully as he manipulated the three-dimensional projections of various creatures from across known space. Today, my young scholars, we discuss the apex predators of the galaxy, Vexthal announced, his voice carrying the melodious tones typical of his species. The crystals embedded in his forehead pulsed a deep amber, indicating his excitement for the subject matter. Each world has produced creatures that have evolved to sit atop their respective food chains, being so perfectly adapted to killing that they represent the pinnacle of natural selection. A student in the front row, a small, furry Quillen with large, dark eyes, raised one of her 6 arms tentatively. Professor, what makes a creature truly dangerous? Is it size? Strength? Intelligence? Vexthal's skin shifted to a pleased blue-green as he considered the question. Excelente Waidi, Pipla. The most dangerous creatures are not always the largest or strongest. Often, it is a combination of factors that creates the perfect killing machine. He gestured to the hologram, which now displayed a massive, serpentine creature with rows of crystalline teeth. The Nexus Void Serpent from the Outer Rim, for instance, can grow to lengths of 300 meters and possesses venom potent enough to dissolve starship hulls. The assembled students gasped in appropriate awe, some of the more nervous ones shuffling in their seats. A Corvin student, his blue-scaled head bobbing with interest, clicked his mandibles together. Haven't he been successfully captured, Professor? Indeed, Vexthal replied, his skin now cycling through proud purples and golds. Though it required a fleet of specialized vessels and resulted in the loss of several research teams. The specimen we eventually secured is housed in the maximum security xenobiology facility on Kepler Station. The hologram shifted to display another creature, this one more humanoid in appearance, but with elongated limbs and claws that seemed to bend light around them. The Shadow Stalker of Umbros Prime, Vexthal continued. These beings can phase partially out of our dimension, making them nearly impossible to track or contain. They hunt by scent and can detect prey from distances measured in light years. A collective shudder ran through the students. The creature on display moved with an otherworldly grace, its form seeming to flicker in and out of existence even in the recording. Professor, called out a hegemony student from the back, her voice carrying the mechanical undertones of her cybernetic vocal cords. What about the human homeworld? Earth, I believe it's called. They're the newest species to join the Galactic Council. What manner of apex predators did they evolve alongside? Vexthal's skin patterns paused mid-shift, settling into a neutral gray that indicated deep thought. Earth was indeed a recent addition to the galactic community, and the humans had proven to be surprisingly adaptable to interstellar civilization. Their representative, Ambassador Sarah Chun, had impressed many with her diplomatic skills during the integration process. Humans, Vexthal mused, manipulating the hologram to display Earth. The blue-green world rotated slowly, its single moon visible in the background. An interesting case study. Earth appears to be remarkably diverse in its ecosystems, but the dominant predators are surprisingly small. The hologram zoomed in to show various Earth creatures. First appeared a large feline with distinctive orange and black stripes. The Siberian tiger, weighing perhaps 300 kilograms. Impressive by some standards, but hardly the most fearsome predator we've encountered. Next came a massive shape moving through blue water. The great white shark, an aquatic predator with remarkable sensory capabilities and powerful jaws. Again, formidable within its environment, but limited in scope. A student near the middle of the hall, a gas-breathing Netherian, floating in his environmental suit, pulsed his bioluminescent patches in a pattern indicating confusion. Professor, these creatures seem rather modest compared to the galactic examples we've studied. How did the humans achieve dominance on their world with such competition? Vexthal's skin shifted to an intrigued orange-red. An excellent observation, Gethmore. The humans' path to dominance was not through physical prowess, but through tool use, social cooperation, and, most notably, their ability to form bonds with other species. The hologram changed to show humans working alongside various Earth creatures. Dogs running beside human hunters, horses carrying human riders, even birds of prey perched on human arms. The humans developed a unique trait among sapient species, Vexthal explained. They domesticated and formed partnerships with other predators on their world. This symbiotic relationship allowed them to leverage the natural abilities of multiple species while adding their own intelligence and tool-making capabilities to the equation. A Vorthan student, her tentacles writhing with curiosity, spoke up. But surely they must have encountered something that tested these abilities? Some creature that pushed them to their limits. Vexthal paused, accessing his vast database of Earth fauna. His search parameters expanded as he looked for creatures that might have presented a significant challenge to early human development. The hologram flickered through various displays. Cave bears, dire wolves, saber-toothed cats. All impressive predators, but all extinct. It appears, Vexthal said slowly, his skin shifting to a puzzled yellow, that most of the truly formidable predators that humans might have encountered in their evolutionary history are now extinct. The current ecosystem seems relatively peaceful. This statement caused a stir among the students. Several species began chattering among themselves in their native languages, expressing disbelief that a world could produce a spacefaring civilization without more significant predatory pressure. Perhaps, suggested the Corvin student, their evolutionary pressure came from each other, intraspecies competition rather than interspecies predation. A valid hypothesis, Vexthal agreed. Humans do show remarkable adaptability and resourcefulness. Their rapid technological advancement and social organization suggest significant selective pressure for intelligence and cooperation. The Quillan student, Pipla, raised another arm. Professor, has anyone ever tested human responses to galactic-class predators? It might be interesting to see how their domestication abilities translate to truly dangerous creatures. Vexthal's skin cycled through several colors before settling on an excited gold. Now that, my dear students, is a fascinating research proposal. The ethics committee would need to approve any such study, of course, but the scientific value could be enormous. The mechanical voice of the hegemony student cut through the growing excitement. What creature would provide an adequate test? It would need to be dangerous enough to be meaningful, but not so lethal as to guarantee harm to human subjects. The class fell silent as Vexthal considered this. His four arms moved independently as he manipulated the hologram, cycling through various galactic predators. Each seemed either too dangerous or too specialized for a meaningful test. The Kytherian howler, he said finally, the hologram displaying a creature that looked like a cross between a large cat and a lizard with bioluminescent stripes along its flanks and 6 legs ending in retractable claws. Native to the forest moons of Kyther Prime. They're pack hunters, highly intelligent and aggressive but not overwhelmingly lethal. They've been used in controlled studies before. The creature on display moved with predatory grace, its eyes seeming to track movement even in the recorded footage. Its howl, when played through the audio system, sent involuntary shudders through several students. They typically hunt in groups of 4 to 6, Vexthal continued, using coordinated tactics to separate prey from herds. They're capable of problem-solving and have been observed using simple tools. Most importantly for our purposes, they're aggressive enough to attack unfamiliar species, but intelligent enough to potentially recognize superior threats and back down. The Netherian student pulsed nervously. Professor, surely you're not seriously considering this experiment? The liability alone would be staggering. Of course not as a formal class project, Vexthal assured him, though his skin maintained its excited gold coloration. But as a theoretical research proposal to submit to the Xenobiology Research Council, the data could provide invaluable insights into human behavioral patterns and their claims of interspecies bonding abilities. As the discussion continued, none of the students noticed the small recording device that had been discreetly placed near the front of the lecture hall. The device belonged to a human graduate student named Marcus Webb, who had been auditing xenobiology courses as part of his cultural exchange program. Marcus had arrived late to the lecture and taken a seat in the back, his presence largely unnoticed among the diverse array of alien students. Marcus listened with growing interest and a certain amount of concern as the discussion evolved from theoretical to increasingly specific. He had grown up on a ranch in Montana, where working with animals was simply part of daily life. The idea that this was considered unusual or worthy of scientific study was both flattering and slightly alarming. As the class period drew to a close, Vexthal assigned his students to research apex predators from their own homeworlds and prepare presentations on how different species might respond to human domestication techniques. The assignment was intended to be theoretical, but Marcus could sense the underlying excitement in the room. After the last student had filed out, Marcus approached the professor's podium. Vexthal was busy organizing his holographic files, his skin still cycling through pleased golds and excited oranges. "Professor Vexthal," Marcus called out, causing the alien instructor to look up. His skin immediately shifted to a surprised silver blue upon seeing the human. "Ah, Mr. Webb, isn't it? I didn't realize you were auditing today's lecture. I hope you found the discussion illuminating." "Very much so," Marcus replied carefully. "I was particularly interested in your theoretical research proposal regarding humans and galactic predators." Vexthal's skin shifted to an embarrassed purple. "I hope you understand that was purely academic speculation. The university would never approve an actual experiment of that nature." "Of course," Marcus said, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "I was wondering, though, if you had given any thought to the ethical implications of such a study." "Naturally, any research involving sentient species requires extensive ethical review. Both the safety of human subjects and the welfare of the test creatures would need to be paramount concerns." Marcus nodded slowly. "And if a human were to volunteer for such a study?" "Hypothetically speaking, of course." Vexthal's skin patterns froze completely, a sign of extreme surprise among his species. "Mr. Webb, surely you're not suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Marcus said quickly. "I'm just curious about the theoretical framework. After all, if humans really do have unique interspecies bonding abilities, wouldn't it be beneficial for galactic science to understand how those abilities work?" The professor's skin began cycling rapidly through confused patterns of orange, purple, and yellow. The liability issues alone would be insurmountable. The university's insurance would never cover such an experiment. "What if it were conducted off-campus?" Marcus asked. "As an independent research project, perhaps, with proper documentation and safety protocols, of course." Vexthal stared at the human for a long moment. In all his years of teaching, he had never encountered a subject species willing to volunteer for predator interaction studies. The scientific opportunity was unprecedented, but the risks were enormous. "Mr. Webb, I strongly advise against pursuing this line of thinking. The creatures we discussed today are not domesticated animals. They are wild predators with no exposure to human behavioral patterns. The probability of serious injury or death would be unacceptably high." Marcus smiled, an expression that Vexthal had learned indicated either amusement or confidence among humans. "Professor, with respect, I don't think you fully understand what humans are capable of. We've been working with dangerous animals for thousands of years. It's not magic or luck. It's understanding, patience, and respect for the animal's nature. The Kytherian howler is not a horse or a dog, Mr. Webb. It's a creature that has evolved to kill efficiently and without mercy." "Every predator has evolved to kill efficiently," Marcus countered. "But every predator also has instincts and behaviors that can be understood and worked with. The key is recognizing what motivates them and finding ways to communicate that you're not a threat, or better yet, that you're useful to them." Vexthal's skin had settled into a worried gray-green. The human's confidence was both impressive and deeply concerning. Even if such an experiment were theoretically possible, the logistics would be nightmarish. Kytherian howlers are not common in research facilities. They're typically studied in their natural habitat or in specialized containment facilities. Where would one find such facilities? Marcus asked with what seemed like casual curiosity. The Kepler Station Xenobiology Research Center maintains several species for behavioral studies. Vexthal replied automatically, then immediately realized he should not have provided that information. "But, Mr. Webb, I must insist that you abandon this line of inquiry. The risks are simply too great." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Of course, Professor. I appreciate your concern. I was just curious about the theoretical aspects of the research." As Marcus gathered his things and prepared to leave, Vexthal found himself both relieved and strangely disappointed. The human's confidence was infectious, and Part of the professor was genuinely curious to see if human claims about interspecies bonding were more than mere boasting. "Mr. Webb," he called out as Marcus reached the door. "If you were to hypothetically pursue such research, what would your approach be?" Marcus paused and turned back. "Patience, Professor. Observation. Understanding what the animal needs and finding ways to provide it. Most aggressive behavior comes from fear or competition for resources. Remove those factors, and you can usually find common ground. And if the creature simply views you as prey..." Marcus smiled again. "Then you have to convince it that you're not prey. Sometimes that means showing strength. Sometimes it means showing that you're not competing for their resources. Every situation is different. The howlers are pack hunters. Even if you manage to establish some sort of rapport with one individual, the pack dynamics would complicate matters enormously. Pack animals are often easier to work with than solitary ones," Marcus said confidently. "They understand hierarchy and cooperation. If you can establish your position in their social structure, they'll often accept you as part of their group." Vexthal's skin patterns had shifted to an intrigued orange. Despite his concerns about safety, the professor was finding this discussion fascinating from an academic perspective. "You speak as if you have experience with pack predators. Wolves, coyotes, wild dogs," Marcus listed casually. "My grandfather worked with wildlife rehabilitation. You learn to read animal behavior pretty quickly when your safety depends on it. But these were Earth predators. You understand their evolutionary history, their behavioral patterns. Kytherian howlers evolved on a different world under different pressures." "True," Marcus acknowledged. "But predator behavior tends to follow certain universal patterns. Territorial behavior, pack hierarchy, threat assessment. These are consistent across species because they're effective survival strategies." As Marcus finally left the lecture hall, Vexthal found himself staring at the holographic display still showing the Kytherian howler. The creature's bioluminescent stripes pulsed in a rhythmic pattern, and its eyes seemed to track some unseen prey. The professor's academic curiosity was warring with his sense of responsibility. The opportunity to study human interspecies bonding abilities in a controlled environment was unprecedented. Such research could revolutionize understanding of behavioral ecology across the galaxy. But the risks were undeniable. Kytherian howlers were not laboratory mice. They were apex predators with intelligence, aggression, and the physical tools to kill most galactic species without difficulty. Even with the best safety protocols, the probability of injury was significant. Still, as Vexthal prepared to leave his office that evening, he found himself accessing the contact information for Dr. Yara Voss, the director of the Kepler Station Xenobiology Research Center. Dr. Voss was an old colleague, a Terran scientist who had been instrumental in establishing many of the galaxy's current xenobiology protocols. Perhaps a casual inquiry about their current howler research would be harmless. After all, it was always important to stay current with developments in the field. The professor's skin settled into determined blues and purples as he composed a message to his colleague. What harm could there be in a simple academic discussion? Meanwhile, Marcus Webb was in his dormitory room, using his personal communication device to research transportation schedules to the Kepler station. His roommate, a Zephyrian engineering student named Krill X, was studying at his own workstation and didn't notice the human's focused attention on travel arrangements. Marcus had meant what he said about human abilities with animals, but he also understood that the professor's concerns were valid. This wouldn't be like working with Earth predators in familiar environments. This would require careful planning, extensive preparation, and probably more luck than skill. But the opportunity to prove that humans could form bonds with any species, even dangerous galactic predators, was too significant to ignore. If successful, such a demonstration could fundamentally change how other species viewed humanity's role in the galactic community. As Marcus researched Kytherian howler behavior patterns and Kepler Station's visitor policies, he began formulating a plan. The key would be approaching this scientifically with proper documentation and safety measures. If he could convince Dr. Voss to allow a controlled demonstration, it might be possible to satisfy Professor Vexthal's academic curiosity while proving human capabilities to the broader scientific community. The challenge would be significant, but Marcus had grown up believing that any animal could be understood and worked with if you took the time to learn their language. He was about to test that belief against one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Dr. Yara Voss stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station's Xenobiology Research Center, watching the morning feeding routine for the facility's most dangerous residents. The research center was a marvel of engineering, built into the hollow core of a massive asteroid that had been converted into one of the galaxy's premier xenobiology facilities. The artificial gravity, atmospheric controls, and containment systems represented the cutting edge of galactic technology. Below her, through reinforced transparent aluminum barriers, she could see the Kytherian howler pack in their specialized habitat. The enclosure was enormous, nearly a kilometer square, designed to replicate the forest environment of Kyther Prime's moons. Bioluminescent fungi provided the soft, blue-green lighting that the howlers preferred, while carefully controlled temperature and humidity systems maintained the specific atmospheric conditions the creatures required. The pack consisted of 6 individuals, led by a massive alpha female the research team had designated as Subject 1. The alpha was nearly 3 meters long from nose to tail, with the distinctive bioluminescent stripes that marked her as the dominant member of the group. Her intelligence was evident in the way she observed the feeding routine, calculating and patient. Dr. Voss had been studying these creatures for 3 years, ever since they had been captured during a research expedition to Kyther Prime. The pack dynamics, hunting strategies, and problem-solving abilities had provided invaluable data for the xenobiology community. But she was also aware that her time with them was limited. The Galactic Ethics Committee was under increasing pressure to return captured sentient species to their natural habitats, and Kytherian howlers were definitely intelligent enough to qualify for protection under those guidelines. The communication device on her wrist chimed softly, indicating an incoming message. She glanced at the display and was surprised to see a message from Professor Vexthal of the Galactic Xenobiology Institute. She hadn't heard from her old colleague in nearly a year. Dr. Voss, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to inquire about your current research with Kytherian howlers. I've had an interesting discussion with one of my students regarding human interspecies bonding abilities, and I remembered your facility houses specimens of these fascinating creatures. Would you be available for a consultation? The topic has significant theoretical implications for our understanding of human behavioral ecology. Respectfully, Professor Vexthal. Yara smiled as she read the message. Vexthal had always been one of the more progressive researchers in the field, willing to explore unconventional theories if they showed scientific merit. The mention of human interspecies bonding was particularly intriguing, given her own background. She had been born on Earth, in what was then called Denmark, but had spent most of her professional career working with alien species across the galaxy. Her unique perspective as both human and xenobiologist had proven valuable in understanding how different species approach the study of life. She was one of only a dozen human scientists working at major galactic research facilities. Dr. Hendricks, she called her assistant, a young Corvin researcher who was monitoring the feeding sensors. I need to make a communication call. Can you handle the morning observations? Of course, Dr. Voss. The pack behavior is within normal parameters today. Subject 1 appears to be teaching the younger individuals advanced hunting techniques. Yara nodded and made her way to her office, a comfortable space that she had decorated with artifacts from various worlds she had studied. The walls were lined with holographic displays showing different alien ecosystems, and her desk held geological samples from a dozen different planets. She activated her communication console and sent a real-time link request to Professor Vexthal. The connection established quickly, and the professor's distinctive crystalline features appeared on her display. His skin patterns were cycling through curious oranges and excited golds. Yara, thank you for responding so quickly, Vexthal said, his melodious voice carrying clearly through the communication link. I hope I'm not interrupting important research. Not all, old friend. It's always good to hear from you. Your message mentioned human interspecies bonding. That's quite a specific topic. Indeed, I had a fascinating discussion with one of my students, a human, actually about the unique abilities your species seems to possess for forming relationships with other creatures. It got me thinking about potential research opportunities. Yara leaned back in her chair, intrigued. What kind of research opportunities? Well, my work focuses on predator behavior and adaptation strategies. I've been teaching about apex predators from various worlds, and the topic of human domestication abilities came up. One of my students suggested that it might be interesting to test human responses to galactic-class predators. That's a bold research proposal, Yara said carefully. What species were you considering? The Kytherian howlers you work with, actually. They seem like an ideal test subject, dangerous enough to be meaningful, but intelligent enough to potentially recognize and respond to non-threatening behavior. Yara was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. Vex, you do realize the liability issues involved in such research? Even with the best safety protocols, the risk to human subjects would be enormous. Of course, that's why I'm approaching this as a theoretical discussion at this point. But the scientific value could be significant. If humans really do possess unique interspecies bonding abilities, understanding the mechanism could revolutionize our approach to xenobiology. Have you discussed this with the ethics committee? Not yet. I wanted to understand the practical aspects first. What would such an experiment actually look like? What safety measures would be required? Is it even possible to design a meaningful test? Yara glanced at her wall display, which showed the current status of the howler enclosure. The pack was spread throughout their territory, with some individuals resting while others continued their morning activities. The howlers are incredibly intelligent, Vex. They've demonstrated problem-solving abilities comparable to some sapient species. But they're also apex predators with strong territorial instincts. That's what makes them ideal for testing human claims about interspecies bonding. If humans can establish positive relationships with creatures that are intelligent and dangerous, it would validate their supposed abilities in a way that working with smaller, less threatening species cannot. What human would be crazy enough to volunteer for such an experiment? Actually, that's another interesting aspect of this situation. The student who originally suggested the research, Marcus Webb, has indicated he would be willing to participate. His confidence in human abilities is quite remarkable. Yara felt a chill of concern. A student? Vex, please tell me you're not seriously considering using an untrained volunteer for predator research. Of course, not in any official capacity. But his enthusiasm for the project has made me curious about the theoretical framework. How would such research be conducted? What protocols would be necessary? Even theoretically, you'd need extensive safety measures, remote monitoring, immediate extraction capabilities, medical support, armed security. And that's assuming you could find a way to safely introduce a human to the pack without triggering their attack response. What triggers their attack response? Fear, territorial violación. Yara accessed her research files, displaying behavioral data from 3 years of observations. Multiple factors. They're highly territorial, so any intrusion into their space is perceived as a threat. They have excellent threat assessment abilities. They can distinguish between prey species and potential predators based on behavior patterns and pheromone signatures. And they're pack hunters, so even if one individual doesn't view someone as a threat, the group dynamic can escalate situations quickly. But they are intelligent enough to recognize superior threats and back down. Under certain circumstances, yes. We've observed them avoiding confrontation with larger predators in simulated environments. But their threshold for retreat is quite high. They're apex predators on their home world. They're not used to backing down from anything. Vexthal's skin patterns shifted to thoughtful purples and blues. What about their social structure? Could a human potentially integrate into their pack hierarchy? Theoretically possible, but extremely dangerous to attempt. Their pack structure is based on complex interactions involving scent marking, dominance displays, and ritualized combat. A human wouldn't understand the subtleties involved, and misreading the social cues could trigger violent responses. As they continued discussing the theoretical aspects of human-howler interaction, neither scientist noticed that their conversation was being monitored by an automated research assistant that was programmed to flag discussions of potential experiments. The assistant, designed to help with grant applications and research proposals, had tagged their conversation as a potential new project and had begun compiling relevant safety protocols and ethical guidelines. Meanwhile, Marcus Webb was aboard a commercial transport vessel en route to Kepler Station. He had managed to book passage as part of a student research group that was visiting the facility for educational purposes. The cover story was legitimate. He was genuinely interested in xenobiology research, but his specific intentions regarding the howlers remained private. The journey through hyperspace gave him time to study everything he could find about Kytherian howlers. The available research was extensive, thanks to Dr. Voss's work, but most of it focused on hunting behavior, pack dynamics, and environmental requirements. Very little had been written about their responses to unfamiliar species. His fellow passengers on the transport were a mix of species from across the galaxy. Graduate students, researchers, and a few tourists who were interested in seeing one of the most advanced xenobiology facilities in known space. Marcus found himself sitting next to a Quillan researcher named Dr. Zilf, who was traveling to Kepler Station to study atmospheric adaptation in aquatic species. First time visiting the station, Dr. Zilf asked, her large eyes reflecting genuine interest. Yes, I'm particularly interested in predator behavior studies, Marcus replied. Dr. Voss's work with Kytherian howlers has been fascinating to read about. The howlers. Magnificent creatures, but quite dangerous. Dr. Voss is very careful about access to that particular research area. I believe only senior researchers are allowed in the observation areas. That's understandable. Safety has to be the primary concern with creatures that dangerous. Dr. Zilpha's fur rippled in what Marcus had learned was a sign of amusement among her species. You speak very casually about dangerous predators, young human. Most species have a healthy fear of creatures that could kill them. Her own experience as a human working with alien species had given her some insights, but she had never attempted anything as ambitious as forming a relationship with an apex predator. She made her way back to the observation deck, where Dr. Hendricks was documenting the pack's afternoon activities. The howlers were engaged in what appeared to be play behavior. Younger pack members chasing each other through the artificial forest while the adults watched tolerantly. Any interesting developments? She asked. Subject 3 appears to be pregnant, Dr. Hendricks reported, his mandibles clicking with excitement. Her behavioral patterns have changed significantly over the past week, and the pack is showing protective behaviors around her. Yara felt a moment of genuine concern. A pregnant howler would make the pack significantly more aggressive and territorial. Any research involving human subjects would be impossible under those conditions. How far along do you estimate? Based on Kytherian reproductive cycles, probably early stage. But that means the pack's protective instincts will be heightened for the next several months. Yara nodded, making notes in her research log. We'll need to adjust our behavioral studies accordingly. No unnecessary disturbances to their environment until after the birth. As she watched the pack through the observation window, she found herself wondering about Marcus Webb, the student who had apparently inspired Professor Vexthal's research interests. What kind of person volunteered to test themselves against apex predators? Was it confidence, ignorance, or something else entirely? Her communication device chimed again, this time with a message from the station's Visitor Coordination Office. A research group from the Galactic Xenobiology Institute was scheduled to arrive tomorrow for a 3-day educational tour. The group included 17 students from various species, along with their faculty supervisor. Something about the timing seemed too coincidental. She accessed the visitor manifest and scanned the names. There listed among the students was Marcus Webb. Dr. Voss stared at the name for a long moment, then looked back at the howler enclosure. The pack was settling in for their afternoon rest period, with the alpha female positioning herself at a vantage point where she could observe the entire territory. Her bioluminescent stripes pulsed slowly, a sign of contentment. Dr. Hendricks, I need to review our security protocols for the educational tours, specifically the procedures for the predator observation areas. Is there a concern, Dr. Voss? Possibly. We may be hosting a very enthusiastic student who has some unconventional ideas about interspecies relationships. As the afternoon shifted into evening, Marcus Webb's transport was dropping out of hyperspace near Kepler Station. The difference between a Montana wolf and a Kytherian howler was vast, and the consequences of misreading the situation could be fatal. Still, the opportunity to prove human capabilities to the galactic community was too significant to ignore. If he succeeded, it would validate human claims about interspecies bonding in a way that no amount of academic discussion could achieve. If he failed, Marcus pushed that thought away and focused on his preparations. Tomorrow he would see the howlers for the first time, and he would begin the delicate process of determining whether his theories about universal animal behavior had any basis in reality. The transport docked with Kepler Station with barely a tremor, and Marcus gathered his belongings. As he prepared to disembark, he reminded himself of the fundamental principle that had guided his grandfather's work with wild animals. Respect the animal's nature, understand their needs, and never forget that they are not humans in animal clothing. He was about to discover whether that principle applied to creatures that had evolved on an alien world under completely different evolutionary pressures. The educational tour group from the Galactic Xenobiology Institute moved through Kepler Station's main corridors like a small parade of academic curiosity. Students from various species clustered around their guide, Dr. Hendricks, as he explained the station's history and research capabilities. Marcus Webb positioned himself near the back of the group, observing both the facility and his fellow students while maintaining a casual demeanor. The station's interior was a marvel of engineering designed to accommodate multiple species' environmental needs. Atmospheric processors maintained different gas mixes in various sections, while gravity generators could be adjusted for species that required different gravitational conditions. The corridors were wide enough to accommodate large species like the corvian delegates, while also providing smaller passages for species that preferred more intimate spaces. The research facility houses over 300 different species from across the galaxy, Dr. Hendricks explained as they walked, his mandibles clicking with professional pride. Each habitat is carefully designed to replicate the natural environment of the species being studied, allowing us to observe natural behaviors while conducting controlled research. A Zephyrian student near the front of the group raised one of her forearms. Dr. Hendricks, what safeguards are in place for the more dangerous species? Surely some of the predators you study pose significant risks. Excellent question, Cassera. We employ multiple layers of security for all predator species, but especially for apex predators like our Kytherian howler pack. The containment systems include both physical barriers and energy fields that can be activated independently. All dangerous species are monitored continuously by automated systems that can detect changes in behavior patterns or stress indicators. Marcus listened carefully, mentally cataloging the security measures. He was particularly interested in the mention of stress indicators. If the monitoring systems were sophisticated enough to detect emotional states in the animals, they might also be able to detect non-threatening intentions from humans. The group's first stop was the herbivore research section, where they observed massive creatures from various grass-eating species. The Vulcan grass titans were particularly impressive, standing nearly 5 meters tall and covered in crystalline scales that reflected the artificial sunlight. These gentle giants have been brought to the station to study their unique digestive systems, which could break down the silicon-based vegetation of their homeworld. These creatures are completely harmless, Dr. Hendricks noted. Their species evolve on a world with no major predators, so they have no natural fear responses or defensive behaviors. Students often ask why we study herbivores at a facility known for predator research. The answer is that understanding prey behavior is essential for understanding predator behavior. You cannot study one without the other. The next stop was the aquatic research section, where various marine species lived in carefully controlled water environments. The tour group watched in fascination as the Nexus dolphins demonstrated their problem-solving abilities by navigating through complex, three-dimensional mazes. These creatures had evolved intelligence comparable to most sapient species, but their aquatic nature had prevented them from developing technology. Marcus found the dolphins particularly interesting because of their social structure. Like Earth dolphins, they appeared to use complex communication patterns and cooperative behaviors. The similarities between species that had evolved on completely different worlds suggested that certain traits might be universal among intelligent creatures. The Nexus dolphins are one of our most successful research subjects, Dr. Hendricks continued. They've demonstrated the ability to learn symbolic languages and can communicate abstract concepts. Dr. Voss has been working with them to develop interspecies communication protocols that could be applied to other intelligent but non-technological species. A hegemony student, her mechanical vocal cords producing their characteristic synthesized tones, asked, "Has Dr. Voss had success communicating with other intelligent species? The predator species, for instance." Dr. Voss has made significant progress with several species, including the Kytherian howlers. While they don't possess the same level of abstract thinking as the dolphins, they've demonstrated the ability to understand and respond to certain communication patterns. Marcus felt a surge of excitement. If the howlers could already understand some form of communication, it meant they might be capable of recognizing non-threatening intentions. This was exactly the kind of information he needed to develop his approach. The tour continued through various research sections, each more fascinating than the last. They observed the crystalline spiders of Xerion Prime, whose web patterns contain mathematical sequences that corresponded to their planet's magnetic field fluctuations. They watched the floating jellies of the gas giant Nephros, creatures that existed in a gaseous state and could manipulate electromagnetic fields to communicate across vast distances. Finally, after nearly 3 hours of touring, Dr. Hendricks led the group to the high-security section that housed the station's most dangerous residents. The corridors here were noticeably different: reinforced walls, additional security scanners, and emergency alert systems visible every few meters. This section requires special clearances for most research activities, Dr. Hendricks explained as they approached a series of observation windows. The creatures housed here are all apex predators from various worlds, studied to better understand predatory behavior and ecological relationships. The first observation window revealed the Nexus void serpent that Professor Vexthal had discussed in his lecture. The massive creature moved through its habitat with fluid grace, its crystalline teeth occasionally catching the light as it investigated various enrichment objects placed in its environment by the research team. The void serpent is our largest predator, Dr. Hendricks noted. Despite its size, it's actually one of our less dangerous residents because it's a solitary hunter with predictable behavior patterns. It poses no threat as long as proper containment protocols are followed. Several students in the group stepped back from the observation window, despite the obvious safety of their position. The creature was truly massive, and its predatory nature was evident in every movement. The next window showed the shadow stalker of Umbros Prime that had also been featured in Professor Vexthal's presentation. The creature was barely visible, its form seeming to flicker in and out of phase even within the specially designed containment field that prevented its dimensional shifting abilities. The Shadow Stalker presents unique containment challenges due to its phasing abilities, Dr. Hendricks explained. The containment field must constantly adjust to prevent the creature from escaping into other dimensional phases. It's highly intelligent and has tested the containment system multiple times, always probing for weaknesses. As they moved down the corridor, Marcus could see additional observation windows leading to other predator habitats. Each contained creatures that represented the pinnacle of evolutionary adaptation for killing. The diversity was staggering. Some relied on speed, others on strength, and still others on intelligence and cunning. Finally, they reached the observation deck for the Kytherian howler habitat. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as Dr. Hendricks gestured toward the largest observation window. And here we have our most studied predators, the Kytherian howler pack. Dr. Voss has been working with these individuals for 3 years, conducting some of the most comprehensive behavioral research ever performed on this species. Through the massive observation window, Marcus got his first direct look at the creatures he had been studying. The habitat was enormous and beautifully designed to replicate their natural environment. Bioluminescent fungi provided soft, shifting light that created shadows and highlights throughout the artificial forest. The terrain included varied elevations, water features, and dense vegetation that provided numerous opportunities for natural behaviors. The pack was spread throughout their territory, but Marcus could see all 6 individuals from his vantage point. The alpha female, Subject 1, was positioned on a raised area that provided a commanding view of the entire habitat. Her bioluminescent stripes pulsed slowly in a pattern that seemed to communicate contentment, but her posture indicated constant alertness. The other pack members were engaged in various activities. 2 younger individuals appeared to be engaged in play behavior, chasing each other through the undergrowth in a complex game that probably served as hunting practice. Another was investigating an enrichment puzzle that the research team had apparently placed in the habitat, using its claws and intelligence to manipulate the mechanism. The pack structure is based on complex social hierarchies, Dr. Hendricks continued. Subject 1, the large female you can see on the elevated platform, is the alpha. Her position was established through a combination of physical dominance and strategic intelligence. The pack's hunting success rate in simulated exercises is over 90%, which is remarkable for creatures in an artificial environment. A Quillan student raised one of her arms tentatively. Dr. Hendricks, how dangerous would these creatures be to various galactic species? Could they pose a threat to researchers? Extremely dangerous, Dr. Hendricks replied matter-of-factly. The howlers evolved as apex predators on a world with numerous dangerous species. They're equipped to kill virtually any creature they might encounter. Their claws can penetrate most standard protective materials, their jaws can crush bone, and their intelligence allows them to adapt their hunting strategies to new situations. "Have there been any incidents with research staff?" asked a Corvin student, his mandibles clicking with nervous interest. "No serious incidents, but several close calls during the early days of the research program. Dr. Voss implemented strict safety protocols after one of the howlers demonstrated the ability to manipulate the environmental controls in its habitat. They're remarkably intelligent and constantly testing their boundaries." Marcus studied the pack carefully, noting their body language and interaction patterns. The alpha's positioning and periodic vocalizations suggested she was maintaining communication with the entire pack even when they were spread across their large territory. The younger individuals showed respect and deference to the older members, but their play behavior indicated a relaxed, non-stressed environment. "What kind of enrichment activities do you provide for them?" asked the Zephyrian student Kessera. "Puzzle feeders, environmental challenges, simulated hunting scenarios," Dr. Hendricks replied. Dr. Voss has developed an extensive enrichment program to keep them mentally and physically stimulated. Intelligent predators like the howlers require constant mental challenges to prevent behavioral problems. As Marcus watched, one of the younger howlers solved the puzzle mechanism and was rewarded with a food item. The creature's problem-solving approach was methodical and intelligent, trying different combinations until finding the correct solution. This level of intelligence was encouraging. It suggested the creatures could learn and adapt to new situations. "Dr. Hendricks," Marcus said, speaking up for the first time during the tour, "has Dr. Voss ever attempted any direct interaction with the howlers? Communication experiments or behavioral conditioning?" Dr. Hendricks turned to look at Marcus, his compound eyes reflecting light as he considered the question. Dr. Voss has conducted extensive research on their communication patterns and social behaviors, but all from safe observation positions. Direct interaction would be far too dangerous. But theoretically, if someone wanted to attempt communication, what would be the best approach? Theoretically, Dr. Hendricks' mandibles clicked in what Marcus was learning to recognize as amusement. Any such attempt would require extensive safety protocols and would probably be rejected by the ethics committee. The risk to human researchers would be unacceptable. Another student, a gas-breathing Netherian, pulsed his bioluminescent patches and patterns indicating curiosity. "Are humans particularly vulnerable to howler attacks? More so than other species?" "Actually, humans might be somewhat less vulnerable than many species," Dr. Hendricks replied thoughtfully. "They're relatively large, they don't trigger the typical prey responses, and their upright posture might be interpreted as a dominance display rather than submissive behavior. But less vulnerable is relative when discussing apex predators. The howlers could easily kill any known sapient species if they chose to." Marcus absorbed this information carefully. The fact that humans might not immediately trigger prey responses was encouraging. Their upright posture and size could potentially be advantages in establishing that they were not typical prey animals. As the tour group prepared to move to their next destination, Marcus lingered at the observation window, studying the pack dynamics and memorizing the layout of the habitat. The alpha female, Subject 1, seemed to notice his continued attention and turned to look directly at the observation window. For a moment, their eyes met through the transparent barrier. The howler's gaze was intelligent and calculating. Marcus had the distinct impression that she was studying him as intently as he was studying her. Her bioluminescent stripes shifted to a new pattern, one that Marcus didn't recognize from the research literature. After several seconds, she turned away and resumed her survey of the territory. "Mr. Webb," Dr. Hendricks called, "the group is moving on to the environmental systems tour. Are you coming?" "Of course," Marcus replied, reluctantly leaving the observation window. But he had seen what he needed to see. The howlers were intelligent, alert, and curious about their environment. They were also magnificent predators with the capability to kill him without effort. As the tour group moved through the station's environmental control centers, Marcus found himself thinking about the brief eye contact with Subject 1. There had been intelligence in that gaze, but also evaluation. She had been assessing him as a potential threat, prey, or unknown quantity. The challenge would be convincing her and her pack that he represented none of those categories. Instead, he needed to establish himself as something new, a potential ally, or at least a non-threatening presence that could coexist in their environment. The tour concluded several hours later with a presentation by Dr. Voss herself in the station's main conference room. Marcus had been hoping for this opportunity to observe the lead researcher and get a sense of her approach to working with dangerous species. Dr. Voss was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and the confident demeanor of someone who had spent her career working with creatures that could kill her. She spoke passionately about the importance of xenobiology research and the insights that could be gained from studying behavior across species lines. Each species we study provides a unique perspective on the possibilities of evolution and intelligence, she said to the assembled students. The howlers, for instance, have developed hunting strategies and social cooperation that rival those of any sapient species, despite evolving completely independently from our technological civilizations. A student asked about the challenges of studying such dangerous creatures, and Dr. Voss's expression became more serious. The key is respect, she said. These are not laboratory animals to be manipulated. They are intelligent beings with their own needs, instincts, and social structures. Our job is to observe and understand, not to control or dominate. The moment you forget that you're dealing with an apex predator is the moment you become prey. After the presentation, as the students mingled and asked questions, Marcus approached Dr. Voss directly. Dr. Voss, I'm Marcus Webb. I've been following your research on Kytherian howlers with great interest. Your work on interspecies communication has been particularly fascinating. Dr. Voss looked at him with sharp eyes that seemed to evaluate him quickly. Mr. Webb, I understand you've been discussing theoretical research proposals with Professor Vexthal. Marcus was surprised that she knew about his conversations with the professor. News travels quickly in the xenobiology community, especially when that news involves potentially dangerous research proposals. Professor Vexthal mentioned that you had expressed interest in testing human interspecies bonding abilities with galactic predators. I hope you understand the seriousness of such an undertaking. I do understand the risks, Marcus replied, but I also believe that the potential insights could be valuable for the entire galactic community. Humans have a long history of forming beneficial relationships with predator species. Earth predators that evolved alongside humans, Dr. Voss pointed out. The howlers evolved on a completely different world under entirely different pressures. Their behavioral patterns, social structures, and threat assessment systems are fundamentally alien to anything humans have encountered. That's what makes it interesting, Marcus said. If the principles of animal behavior are truly universal, they should apply even to alien species. If they don't work, then we learn that human abilities are more limited than we thought. Dr. Voss studied him for a long moment. And if you're wrong about the universal nature of animal behavior, you could be killed before you have a chance to learn anything. Every advancement in understanding requires some level of risk, Marcus replied. The question is whether the potential gains justify the risks involved. Mr. Webb, I appreciate your enthusiasm for interspecies research, but the howlers are not a suitable test subject for human bonding experiments. They're scheduled to be returned to their natural habitat within the next 6 months. Any disruptive research could jeopardize their successful reintegration. Marcus felt a sense of urgency. 6 months wasn't much time, and it would take significant planning and preparation to conduct any meaningful research. Dr. Voss, what would it take to change your mind? What would convince you that such research could be conducted safely? Dr. Voss was quiet for a moment, and Marcus could see her scientist's curiosity warring with her sense of responsibility. Comprehensive safety protocols, complete theoretical framework, approval from multiple ethics committees, immediate extraction capabilities, and, most importantly, a demonstrated understanding of howler behavior that goes far beyond reading research papers. What would constitute a demonstrated understanding? Successful prediction of their behavior in novel situations. Evidence that you can read their social cues and emotional states. Proof that you understand the difference between curiosity, territorial behavior, and hunting instincts. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. These were reasonable requirements, but they presented a significant challenge. How could he demonstrate understanding of howler behavior without actually interacting with them? And how could he develop such understanding without access to observe them in detail? As the educational tour group prepared to depart the following morning, Marcus made a decision that would change the trajectory of his academic career. Instead of boarding the transport with his fellow students, he approached the station's visitor coordination office and inquired about extended research opportunities. 3 hours later, he had secured a position as a volunteer research assistant, working under Dr. Voss's supervision for a period of 3 months. The position was unpaid and primarily involved data analysis and habitat maintenance, but it would give him daily access to observe the howler pack. Dr. Voss had approved his application with obvious reluctance, but she was also clearly curious about his confidence in human capabilities. "Mr. Webb, you have 3 months to demonstrate that you understand these creatures. If you can convince me that you truly comprehend their behavior and psychology, I'll consider discussing more direct research opportunities. If not, you'll return to your regular studies with a better appreciation for the complexities of xenobiology research." As Marcus settled into his temporary quarters at Kepler Station, he reflected on the commitment he had just made. 3 months to prove that humans could understand and potentially bond with one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. The stakes were higher than academic success. If he was wrong about the universal nature of animal behavior, the consequences could be fatal. But as he prepared to begin his intensive study of the howler pack, Marcus felt a confidence based on a lifetime of working with predators. Every dangerous animal followed certain behavioral patterns, and intelligence usually made those patterns more predictable, not less. The question was whether 3 months would be enough time to decode the behavioral language of creatures that had evolved on an alien world. Marcus Webb's first month at Kepler Station passed in a blur of observation, data analysis, and gradually earning the trust of the research team. Dr. Voss had assigned him to work primarily with Dr. Hendricks, cataloging behavioral patterns, and maintaining the digital records of the howler pack's daily activities. It was routine work, but it gave him unprecedented access to detailed information about the creatures he hoped to eventually approach. Every morning, Marcus arrived at the observation deck before the artificial dawn in the howler habitat. He watched as the pack emerged from their sleeping areas and began their daily routines. The consistency of their behavior was remarkable. Each individual had specific roles and responsibilities within the group structure, and their interactions followed complex but predictable patterns. Subject 1, the alpha female, was always the first to emerge and survey the territory. Her bioluminescent stripes would pulse in specific patterns that Marcus was beginning to recognize as communication signals. The patterns varied based on weather conditions in the habitat, the previous day's activities, and the overall mood of the pack. The pregnant female, Subject 3, had become increasingly important in the pack's social structure. The other members showed protective behaviors around her, and Subject 1 had begun positioning herself to maintain visual contact with the pregnant female at all times. Marcus noted that the pack's territorial patrol patterns had adjusted to ensure that Subject 3 was never far from shelter. "Fascinating, isn't it?" Dr. Voss said one morning, joining Marcus at his usual observation post. "She's due to give birth within the next month, and the entire pack dynamic has shifted to accommodate her needs. I've been tracking the changes in their movement patterns," Marcus replied, pulling up his data analysis on a portable display. "The alpha has reduced the territory they actively patrol by approximately 30%, but they've increased the frequency of perimeter checks. It's a perfect balance between conserving energy and maintaining security." Dr. Voss looked at the data with interest. Marcus had become remarkably skilled at interpreting howler behavior, developing insights that sometimes exceeded those of researchers who had been working with the pack for years. "You've also been tracking their vocalizations, I see. Any patterns emerging?" Marcus highlighted several audio waveform patterns on his display. "They have at least 12 distinct vocal communications that I've identified, but the meaning seems to be contextual. The same vocalization can mean different things depending on the situation and which pack member produces it. That's consistent with pack hunting species across the galaxy. Complex communication systems are essential for coordinated behavior." Dr. Voss paused, studying Marcus's analysis. "You've made remarkable progress in understanding their behavioral patterns. But understanding and interacting are very different things." "I know," Marcus said quietly, "but I'm beginning to see opportunities. Moments when one of them might be receptive to non-threatening contact." Dr. Voss felt a familiar mixture of scientific curiosity and protective concern. Marcus's insights into howler behavior were genuinely impressive, but his confidence about potential interaction still worried her. What kind of opportunities? Marcus pointed to the habitat, where Subject 5, one of the younger pack members, was investigating a new enrichment device that had been installed the previous day. Subject 5 is the most curious of the group. He's always the first to investigate new objects or changes in their environment. Yesterday, when the maintenance team was working on the atmospheric processors, he spent nearly an hour watching them through the observation port. Curiosity can quickly turn to aggression in predator species, especially if they feel their territory is being invaded. True, but his body language during these investigations isn't aggressive. His bioluminescent patterns indicate interest and evaluation, not threat assessment. He's trying to understand new things, not determine if they're dangerous. Dr. Voss had to admit that Marcus's reading of howler body language had become quite sophisticated. His predictions about their behavior had been accurate more often than not, and his insights had actually contributed to several research papers she was preparing. Even if Subject 5 might be receptive to contact, the rest of the pack would view any intrusion as a territorial violation. You can't interact with one howler without dealing with all of them. That's why the approach would need to be gradual, building familiarity over time rather than attempting direct contact immediately. Dr. Voss studied the young human with concern. His confidence was based on genuine understanding of the creatures, but she wasn't sure if he fully comprehended the lethality of the situation he was contemplating. Marcus, I want you to understand something. These creatures are not large dogs or horses that might bite or kick if you make a mistake. They are apex predators capable of killing you in seconds. Their claws can penetrate standard protective gear, their jaws can crush bone, and their hunting instincts are honed by millions of years of evolution. If you misread their behavior even once, there won't be an opportunity to learn from the mistake. I understand the risks, Marcus replied, but I also believe that the principles that guide animal behavior are universal. Respect, patience, understanding their needs. These work whether you're dealing with wolves in Montana or howlers from Kyther Prime. Dr. Voss was quiet for a moment, watching the pack through the observation window. Subject 1 had moved to a new position and was engaged in what appeared to be a grooming session with one of the younger members. The interaction was gentle and social, a reminder that these deadly predators also had complex emotional lives. Your 3-month evaluation period ends in 6 weeks, she said finally. If you want me to consider your research proposal, you'll need to demonstrate more than just behavioral analysis. You'll need to show me that you can predict their responses to entirely novel situations. What kind of novel situations? I'll design some scenarios over the next few weeks. Changes to their environment, new enrichment challenges, maybe introduction of unfamiliar objects or stimuli. If you can accurately predict how they'll respond, it will indicate a deeper understanding of their psychology. Marcus felt a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension. This was his opportunity to prove that his insights went beyond academic observation. What happens if I pass your tests? Then we discussed the practical aspects of designing research protocols that might possibly allow for controlled interaction. But, Marcus, even if you demonstrate perfect understanding of their behavior, the risks will still be enormous. Over the following weeks, Dr. Voss implemented a series of tests designed to challenge Marcus's understanding of howler psychology. She introduced new objects to their habitat without warning him in advance, changed their feeding schedules, and even played recordings of unfamiliar sounds to see how the pack would respond. Marcus's predictions were remarkably accurate. He correctly anticipated that the pack would ignore objects placed in the center of their territory, but investigate items positioned near their territorial boundaries. He predicted that Subject 1 would delegate investigation of new sounds to Subject 5 while maintaining defensive positions. Most impressively, he accurately forecast how the pack would reorganize their patrol patterns when their regular feeding schedule was disrupted. His insights are genuinely impressive, Dr. Hendricks observed during one of their daily research meetings. He's predicting behavior patterns that we didn't observe until we'd been working with the pack for over a year. It's more than just observation, Dr. Voss replied thoughtfully. He's developing an intuitive understanding of how they think. That's rare in xenobiology research. As Marcus's evaluation period drew to a close, an unexpected opportunity arose. Subject 3, the pregnant female, went into labor during the night shift. The birth process was complicated, and the pack's stress levels increased dramatically as they attempted to protect and a sister. Marcus was called in during the emergency because his behavioral predictions had become valuable for anticipating how the pack might respond to medical interventions. The veterinary team needed to provide assistance to Subject 3, but any intrusion into the habitat would normally trigger aggressive defensive behaviors from the entire pack. We need to sedate them for the safety of both the medical team and the animals, Dr. Yoss explained as they watched the situation develop through the observation cameras. But the sedation process itself could stress Subject 3 at a critical moment in the birth. Marcus studied the pack's positioning and behavioral patterns. Subject 1 was maintaining a defensive perimeter around the birthing area, while the other pack members had positioned themselves to watch for threats. Subject 5, the most curious member, was showing signs of stress, but was also displaying protective behaviors towards Subject 3. What if we don't sedate all of them? Marcus suggested. Subject 5 is stressed, but not aggressive. His protective instincts are focused on Subject 3, not on defending against external threats. If we could establish non-threatening contact with him first, he might actually help calm the rest of the pack. Dr. Voss looked at Marcus sharply. You're suggesting direct contact during a medical emergency? I'm suggesting that this might be the one situation where the pack's attention is focused internally rather than on external threats. Their priority is helping Subject 3, not defending territory. Dr. Hendrick's mandibles clicked nervously. The risk would be enormous. If the pack perceives any intrusion as a threat to the birth process, their response could be extremely violent. But if we can establish that we're trying to help rather than harm, the protective instincts might work in our favor instead of against us. Dr. Voss found herself facing the decision she had been dreading for weeks. Marcus's understanding of howler behavior was demonstrably superior to anyone else on the team, but testing that understanding in a life-or-death situation was almost unthinkable. The veterinary team was standing by with sedation equipment, but the medical intervention needed to help Subject 3 would be much safer if the pack could be kept calm through behavioral management rather than chemical sedation. Marcus, if you're wrong about their response, you could be killed before we could extract you from the habitat. If we sedate them and something goes wrong with Subject 3's birth because of the delayed medical intervention, we could lose both her and the offspring. This might be our only chance to test whether human howler cooperation is possible. After a moment of intense consideration, Dr. Voss made a decision that would be debated in xenobiology circles for years to come. Full medical team standing by with immediate extraction capabilities. Emergency sedation ready to deploy in 5 seconds if needed. Continuous monitoring of all vital signs and stress indicators. And Marcus, the moment I see any sign of aggressive behavior from any pack member, you withdraw immediately. 20 minutes later, Marcus Webb stood in the airlock leading to the howler habitat, wearing lightweight protective gear and carrying a medical kit designed to help with the birth process. Through the airlock window, he could see the pack's defensive formation around Subject 3's birthing area. His heart rate was elevated but controlled. 3 months of studying these creatures had taught him to read their body language and understand their motivations. The question was whether that understanding would be sufficient to keep him alive for the next hour. Dr. Voss's voice came through his communication system. Remember, your goal is to establish that you're not a threat and that you're trying to help. Don't try to dominate or control the situation. Let them maintain their protective behaviors while you provide medical assistance. Marcus took a deep breath and activated the airlock cycle. In 90 seconds, he would be sharing space with 6 apex predators during one of the most stressful situations they could experience. As the inner airlock door opened, Marcus stepped into the habitat and immediately assessed the pack's positioning. Subject 1 was approximately 30 meters away, her bioluminescent stripes pulsing in rapid patterns that indicated high alertness. Subject 5 was closer, positioned between Marcus and the birthing area, his posture indicating evaluation rather than immediate aggression. Marcus moved slowly and deliberately, keeping his hands visible and avoiding direct eye contact with any of the pack members. He knelt down about 10 meters from the airlock and placed the medical kit on the ground, then retreated several steps to show that he wasn't claiming territory. Subject 5 approached cautiously, his nose investigating the unfamiliar scents while his eyes remained fixed on Marcus. The young howler's bioluminescent stripes were cycling through patterns that Marcus had learned to associate with curiosity and cautious interest. For several minutes, human and predator regarded each other across the few meters of space between them. Marcus remained motionless, letting Subject 5 complete his evaluation. The rest of the pack watched tensely, but none showed immediate signs of aggression. Then, Subject 3's distressed vocalizations echoed through the habitat, and the entire dynamic shifted. Subject 5's attention turned toward the birthing female, and his protective instincts overrode his caution about the human intruder. The young howler moved toward Marcus and made a soft vocalization that seemed to be a request rather than a threat. Marcus understood. Subject 5 wanted help for his pack member, and he was asking the strange new creature in his territory to provide it. Marcus slowly picked up the medical kit and began moving toward the birthing area, with Subject 5 leading the way. It was the first time in galactic history that a human had walked freely among apex predators, and the implications would reshape understanding of interspecies relationships across the galaxy. But in that moment, Marcus was focused entirely on helping bring new life into the world, while 6 deadly predators watched and evaluated whether this strange creature could be trusted with their most precious responsibility. The birthing area of the howler habitat had become a circle of intense focus and protective energy. Subject 3 lay on her side in a natural depression surrounded by soft bioluminescent moss, her breathing labored and her bioluminescent stripes pulsing in patterns that Marcus had never seen before. The rest of the pack had formed a defensive perimeter, but their attention was split between protecting the birth and monitoring the human who now knelt just meters away. Marcus opened the medical kit with deliberate, slow movements, ensuring that every action was visible to the watching predators. Subject 5 remained close, his posture indicating readiness to attack if Marcus made any movement that seemed threatening to the laboring female. Subject 1, the Alpha, had positioned herself where she could reach Marcus in a single leap, her powerful muscles visibly tensed. Dr. Voss. Marcus spoke quietly into his communication device. Subject 3 appears to be having complications. The birth has been in progress for over 6 hours, which is significantly longer than the recorded normal duration for this species. Dr. Voss's voice crackled through the speaker, audible to both Marcus and the sensitive hearing of the howlers. Can you determine the nature of the complication without direct examination? I think the offspring is positioned incorrectly. Subject 3's vocalizations and movement patterns suggest she's having difficulty with the delivery. Marcus slowly reached into the medical kit and withdrew a bioscanner designed for use on various species. The device could provide detailed information about the birth process without requiring invasive examination. As he moved the device, Subject 5's attention focused intently on his hands, ready to react if the strange object posed any threat. I'm going to use the bioscanner, Marcus announced, speaking both to Dr. Voss and to the howlers themselves. Although they couldn't understand his words, his calm tone and deliberate movements were a form of communication that transcended language barriers. As the scanner activated and began its examination, Subject 5 leaned closer to investigate the device. His bioluminescent stripes shifted to patterns Marcus had learned to associate with intense curiosity. After a moment, the young howler made a soft vocalization towards Subject 1, as if reporting that the device didn't appear threatening. The scanner results appeared on Marcus's display, confirming his suspicion. The offspring was positioned incorrectly for natural birth, and Subject 3's energy was depleting rapidly. Without intervention, both mother and offspring could be lost. The situation is critical, Marcus reported. The offspring needs to be repositioned manually, but that will require direct contact. Dr. Voss's voice carried clear concern. Marcus, direct physical contact during birth could trigger extreme protective responses. Even if Subject 3 allows you to help, the rest of the pack might view any touching as an attack. Marcus studied the pack's positioning and body language. Subject 1's stripes were pulsing in rapid patterns that indicated high stress and decision-making. She was clearly evaluating whether to allow the intervention or drive away the potential threat to her pack member. I think they understand that Subject 3 is in trouble, Marcus said quietly. Their protective behaviors are focused on helping her, not on defending territory. If I can establish that I'm trying to help rather than harm, their pack instincts might work in my favor. The deciding factor came from Subject 3 herself. The laboring female lifted her head and looked directly at Marcus, her eyes conveying intelligence and desperation. She made a soft, plaintive vocalization that needed no translation, a mother asking for help to save her child. Marcus looked around the circle of watching predators and made a decision that would either validate his theories about universal animal behavior or cost him his life. He slowly moved closer to Subject 3, his hands open and visible, while speaking in the calm, reassuring tone he had used with countless animals throughout his life. "Easy, girl. I'm here to help," he said softly, knowing that his words mattered less than his tone and body language. Subject 1's reaction was immediate and terrifying. The alpha female rose to her full height, her bioluminescent stripes shifting to aggressive warning patterns, and released a low growl that vibrated through Marcus's chest. But she didn't attack. Instead, she maintained her position, watching and evaluating. Subject 5 moved to position himself between Marcus and Subject 1, his own stripes pulsing in what Marcus had learned were calming patterns. The young howler was acting as an intermediary, vouching for the human's intentions to the rest of the pack. Marcus reached Subject 3 and knelt beside her, moving slowly and maintaining the calm energy that had served him well with Earth predators. The female's breathing was becoming more labored, and her bioluminescent stripes were beginning to dim, signs of severe distress that could prove fatal if not addressed quickly. "Dr. Voss, I need to proceed with manual repositioning of the offspring. The mother's condition is deteriorating rapidly." "Understood. Medical team is standing by for immediate extraction if needed." "Marcus, be aware that Subject 1 is showing elevated stress indicators, but she hasn't moved to attack position." Marcus placed his hands on Subject 3's flank, feeling the powerful muscles beneath her hide. The female tensed at the contact, but didn't pull away. Her intelligent eyes remained fixed on his face, as if trying to read his intentions. The repositioning process required delicate manipulation while dealing with a creature whose strength could easily injure him accidentally. Marcus worked with the patience and sensitivity he had learned from his grandfather, responding to Subject 3's cues and working with her natural contractions rather than against them. Around them, the entire pack watched in tense silence. Subject 1 had moved closer, but maintained her defensive position rather than attacking. Subject 5 remained at Marcus's side, occasionally touching his shoulder with his muzzle, a gesture that seemed to be reassurance rather than dominance. After 20 minutes of careful work, Marcus felt the offspring shift into proper position. Subject 3's vocalizations changed from distress to what sounded remarkably like relief. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted to brighter, more energetic displays. "The offspring is properly positioned," Marcus reported. "Natural birth should proceed normally now." Within minutes, Subject 3 delivered a healthy offspring, a small but perfectly formed howler with tiny bioluminescent stripes already beginning to pulse. The mother immediately began the cleaning and bonding process while the rest of the pack vocalized in what could only be described as celebration. Subject 5 touched Marcus's arm with his muzzle, then moved to inspect the new offspring. His bioluminescent patterns were cycling through bright, joyful colors that Marcus had never seen before. The young howler looked back at Marcus and made a soft vocalization that seemed unmistakably like gratitude. Subject 1 approached slowly, her posture no longer defensive but cautious and evaluating. The alpha female studied Marcus for a long moment, then did something unprecedented in galactic xenobiology research. She lowered her head in what appeared to be a gesture of acknowledgement. "Marcus, Dr. Voss's voice carried amazement and relief. "You've just accomplished something that will reshape our understanding of interspecies relationships. The pack has accepted you as a non-threatening member of their social structure." Over the following hours, Marcus remained in the habitat, monitoring both mother and offspring while gradually building relationships with each pack member. Subject 5 became his closest ally, often positioning himself near Marcus and guiding him through the subtle social protocols of howler pack life. The other pack members showed varying degrees of acceptance. The younger individuals were curious and playful, investigating Marcus's scent and testing their ability to communicate with him. The older members remained more cautious but showed no signs of aggression. Subject 1, the alpha, established a relationship based on mutual respect. She clearly recognized Marcus as intelligent and capable, but also maintained her position as pack leader. When Marcus moved through their territory, she would often reposition herself to maintain visual contact, not as a threat, but as a leader ensuring the safety of all pack members, including their unusual new associate. The birth of the offspring created a fundamental shift in pack dynamics that worked strongly in Marcus's favor. In Howler social structure, anyone who contributed to the safety and well-being of pack members, especially the young, was accorded special status. Marcus had not only helped save Subject 3 and her offspring, but had done so at considerable personal risk, demonstrating the kind of pack loyalty that Howlers valued above all else. 3 days after the birth, Marcus was still living and working within the habitat, documenting behaviors and interactions that no human had ever observed. His presence had become normal to the pack, and they had begun including him in their social activities. He participated in their morning territory surveys, helped with the care of the new offspring, and even joined their communal rest periods. The implications for galactic xenobiology are staggering, Dr. Voss noted during her daily reports to the Galactic Research Council. Mr. Webb has demonstrated that human interspecies bonding abilities extend far beyond Earth predators to include creatures that evolved under completely different evolutionary pressures. Professor Vexthal arrived at Kepler Station on the 5th day, his crystalline skin cycling through excited golds and amazed blues as he observed Marcus's interactions with the pack. The professor had come to witness firsthand the results of the research he had originally proposed as a theoretical exercise. Remarkable, Vexthal said as he watched Marcus play with the Howler offspring while the adult pack members looked on with apparent approval. The youngster shows no fear of a creature that could kill it instantly, and the adults show protective behaviors to a member of an entirely different species. It's more than just acceptance, Dr. Voss explained. They've integrated him into their pack structure. Subject 1 defers to his expertise in medical matters. Subject 5 seeks his approval for territory patrol decisions, and the entire pack shows stress responses when he leaves the habitat for extended periods. The research documentation from Marcus's integration with the Howler pack created a sensation throughout the galactic scientific community. Universities across known space began revising their xenobiology curricula to include studies of human interspecies bonding. The implications for diplomatic relationships between species were enormous, suggesting that humans might serve as natural intermediaries in interspecies conflicts. But perhaps the most significant impact was on the broader understanding of consciousness and intelligence. Marcus's success with the Howlers demonstrated that emotional connection and mutual respect could transcend vast evolutionary differences. The pack had accepted him not because they mistook him for a Howler, but because they recognized him as a different kind of intelligent being who shared their values of loyalty, cooperation, and protection of the vulnerable. 6 months later, when it came time to return the pack to their natural habitat on Kyther Prime, Marcus faced the most difficult decision of his life. The pack had clearly bonded with him, and their stress levels increased dramatically whenever separation was discussed. Subject 1 began showing protective behaviors toward Marcus that mirrored those she displayed toward her own offspring. The solution came from an unexpected source. The Kytherian government, learning of the successful interspecies bonding, extended an invitation for Marcus to establish a permanent research station on one of Kyther Prime's moons. The facility would allow for long-term study of Howler behavior in their natural environment, while maintaining the relationships that had been established. Marcus accepted the position, becoming the first human to live permanently among galactic apex predators. His research station became a destination for scientists from across the galaxy who wanted to study interspecies relationships and the possibility of peaceful coexistence between vastly different forms of life. Years later, when asked about the key to his success with the Howlers, Marcus would always give the same answer: respect their nature, understand their needs, and remember that intelligence and emotion are universal languages. Every creature, no matter how different from us, wants the same basic things: safety, food, companionship, and the chance to raise their young in peace. If you can provide or protect those things, you can build relationships across any evolutionary divide. The pack thrived in their natural habitat, with Marcus serving as both researcher and pack member. Subject 3's offspring grew to maturity under the protection of both Howler and human guardians, representing a new generation that would grow up knowing that cooperation between species was not only possible, but natural. Subject 5 eventually became the alpha of a new pack, leading them with the patience and wisdom he had learned from watching Marcus work with his original family. The young Howler's leadership style combined traditional Howler instincts with problem-solving approaches he had observed from his human packmate, creating a more adaptable and successful group. The research station on Kyther Prime became a symbol of what was possible when species approached each other with curiosity and respect rather than fear and dominance. Visitors from across the galaxy came to observe the human who lived among apex predators, not as their master or their prey, but as their family. Professor Vexthal, reflecting on a research project that had begun as a theoretical classroom discussion, often remarked that the most important discoveries in science came not from complex theories or advanced technology, but from the courage to test simple assumptions about the nature of life itself. Marcus Webb had proven that the capacity for love, loyalty, and cooperation existed throughout the galaxy, waiting only for someone brave enough to extend the first gesture of trust. In doing so, he had not only validated human claims about interspecies bonding, but had opened a new chapter in galactic civilization where the bonds between species could transcend the boundaries of evolution, environment, and biology itself. The story of the human who tamed the Howlers became legend throughout the galaxy, but those who knew Marcus understood that he had never tamed anything. Instead, he had simply proven that respect and understanding could turn potential enemies into family, whether they shared your DNA or had evolved on a world 1,000 light years away.